Dear Santa, I have been a very good girl this year. I ate all my vegetables and passed all of my classes. Oh, barely, but I did. For Christmas, I was really hoping to get the new Spyro game. That would be so awesome. Love, Elsie. P.S. Could I also have my student loans paid off? That would be pretty dope too.
Look! Wake up! It's Christmas! Let's go!
It's just a float, you scaredy cat.
With the release of the Spyro Reignited Trilogy breathing life back into the original 3 Spyro games just this year, there's been some speculation as to whether other games in the series might receive a similar remake. While I grew up playing just the original 3 games on PS1, I was pretty content with these ones being remastered. But it got me thinking about one other game in the series that I grew up absolutely loving as a kid. Enter the Dragonfly released in 2002, the first main console release for the series since 2000's PS1 release of Year of the Dragon. Unlike the last game in the original trilogy though, Enter the Dragonfly was met with some of the worst reviews of the Spyro IP's history. And the complaints aren't without their merit. There's so many reasons this game was so bad. From laggy, buggy gameplay to an unfinished and boring set of worlds to explore, and an overall short, disappointing experience coming off of the massive success of its predecessors. When I first played this game as a kid, I was absolutely enthralled with it. The graphics were so much better than the sharp polygonal PS1 graphics, but with the same memorable characters and colorful worlds as the original games. That being said though, childhood nostalgia and naivety really didn't mask the glaring flaws I found with this, playing it again as an adult. But despite being slow and frustrating and just all around clunky and buggy, it didn't have to be this bad. It was made by 2 very inexperienced studios though, and was rushed through production after only about a year, so no wonder it came out looking more like an early alpha tech demo than a finished product. Insomniac passed the Spyro reins over to Check 6 Studios and Equinox Digital Entertainment for the development of Enter the Dragonfly for a next-gen console. Already, these were some gigantic shoes for these fairly new and inexperienced companies to fill. After the release of the game, Check 6 closed down due to the severely poor reception Enter the Dragonfly received, causing other IPs to cancel their plans to have the studio develop games for them. While I had a harder time finding what happened to Equinox, the lack of any existence of the company post-2002 is a pretty telling sign that they met a similar fate. The publishers, Universal Interactive, now known as Vivendi, pushed for the game to be released in time for Christmas of 2002, leading to much of the planned content for the game to be scrapped, though some bits and pieces still remain in the finished product. The original plot of Enter the Dragonfly was that Nasty Nork and Ripto were teaming up to steal all of the dragonflies from the Dragon Realm, a bit of a throwback to the sorceress stealing all of the dragon eggs in Year of the Dragon. There was going to be over 120 dragonflies to rescue, 25 or more levels to explore, presumably across different homeworlds like in the last 3 games, and a return of many of the beloved characters and villains from the last 3 games as well. The new twist added to set this game apart from the previous ones is the incorporation of different breath abilities, such as ice and electricity. Sadly, very little of these elements found their way into the released version of Enter the Dragonfly, and what did make it in was generally poorly executed. It was so disappointing, in fact, that the president of Insomniac referred to the new developer's treatment of the game as being akin to an abused stepchild. Yikes. There is so much potential here though, or at least there was. Like I said before, as a child I spent so many hours playing this game. So much so, in fact, that as an adult I actually still sometimes have dreams about certain levels. Between the environments, the characters, and the effects, it's also vibrant and colorful, and back in 2002 that was pretty damn impressive, at least on the surface. Like, there's something about these water effects that was just so damn pretty to me, and I was honestly a little disappointed at first by the water in the Reignited Trilogy, probably because I was anticipating it to look something like this, or at least have the same effect on me. That's probably just me though. The levels are themed a bit more differently than the previous games, but they're still just as creative. From alien cows and dinosaurs raiding a farm, to monkeys that are literal monks, to pig tourists on a tropical island, presumably getting kidnapped and eaten. Yeah, they were kind of weird too, a little dark, but creative nonetheless. While this game does do a better job of representing the beloved characters such as Hunter, Bianca, and Moneybags, they show up rarely and do very little. Bianca shows up in the first two cutscenes to offer some semblance of a plot, I guess, and Hunter appears in a brief few minigames. The first level available is probably the closest to being what was planned for the rest of the game, with the Elder Dragons offering direction, the Baby Dragons offering side quests to save more dragonflies, and the one and only appearance of Moneybags. The one new mechanic this game attempted to add to the classic Spyro formula was the different breath abilities you get through collecting dragon runes, which you offer to this crystal dragon statue, who I can only assume is one of the Elder Dragons Spyro just forgot to free in the first game. And he just said, you know what, screw it, you stay in there, buddy. Now, on the surface, these abilities seem really cool, and there's a lot of potential as to what you could have done with them. I mean, you start right off with Fire Breath, and then you obtain Bubble Breath pretty quickly to capture dragonflies. And later on, you learn how to use electricity and fire, and then you do this weird shield wing thing for some reason. These breath powers, kind of like the characters, are rarely necessary in the game. In fact, aside from using them to open the gates to the other parts of the hub world, they're not needed at all, especially in order to finish the game. If you really want to break it, like I said before, you can glitch through the hub world and just fight Ripto with only your basic fire breath, and that's it. It's really disappointing, as there are so many ways I could think of that these abilities could have been used to make the gameplay far more diverse and challenging. Like, you could have enemies that can only be defeated using your ice breath if you have fire-based attacks, or you could solve puzzles with them. There's really only a handful of levels that utilize your abilities to solve any sort of problem, such as one where you power some giant hourglass using your electric breath. Overall, Enter the Dragonfly wanted so badly to be the proper continuation of the Spyro IP onto a new console. It wanted to have better graphics, higher frame rate, and an overall longer, bigger story. But unfortunately, it failed in every single one of those aspects and many more, turning itself instead into a pariah of the entire franchise. But because of that, I feel like that's why it deserves a remake more than any of the other games following it. Until then, I can dream, right? I mean, with the recent announcement of a remake of a Crash Bandicoot game outside of the original three, there is still at least some hope. But until then, at least I've got my childhood nostalgia. And feeling like a speedrunner by breaking an already totally broken game. I mean, that's part of what makes these notoriously awful games fun, right? You lay down. Thank you. Lay down, please.